In this video, I'm going to share with you my 9-point checklist to make sure that you will never have high restorations again. Okay, maybe not never, but you'll really reduce the chance of you spending so much time in creating beautiful anatomy in your composites, only to have to remove the rubber dam and spend a long time erasing all that anatomy because now it's interfering in the bite. So I'm hoping that with these 9 steps I'm going to share with you, you'll get much more success with your restorations. And you'll find that with these parafunctional patients that actually they're the ones who, when you check with your articulating paper, they're like, yeah, it's still proud, it's still proud, it's still proud, because they've parafunctioned and really they've got a very precise occlusion now. And even introducing a small error, they can feel it because they're so used to. They're the ones who are hypersensitive to their occlusion. So A, you need to check the occlusion before you start. Like, it's easier said than done, but how many of us actually get some articulating paper out, get them to bite together, take a photo with the intraoral camera, and then compare it at the end? It's such a simple thing to do. Check the height of the marginal ridge of the adjacent tooth, because you know that your restoration, the marginal ridge of that, shouldn't be more of the adjacent tooth. So that's an easy little guide that you can use. Check the existing occlusal morphology, because if your tooth that you're restoring looks like this to begin with, and you're conforming, guess what it's going to have to look like more or less after you're finished. Yes, it might look a nicer version than that, but it still needs to have the space for this patient to power function in that way. You need to check the cuspal inclines and the wear facets of the adjacent teeth. So it's very useful to get a probe and line it up on the wear facets of the adjacent teeth and then carry it over to your composite restoration, for example, and match those inclines. You need to check with the articulating paper. So that's something that you can see, but you need to ignore the false contacts. Like sometimes we check with the articulating paper and we get all these marks. And what do? We start attacking all these marks. But really, which ones should you be removing? So have a look. If you know that your buccal cusp of your lower molar is occluding with the fossa of the upper molar, then you know where you sort of need to get your burr to address where it could be high. And if you've got a contact on the buccal cusp of the upper, then you know that's probably just the articulating paper dragging on. So really think critically about which teeth are actually supposed to be touching at that point. Listen to the bite. How many of you actually get your patient to go and listen to it? And sometimes it's obvious when you get them to bite together, it just sounds off, or it sounds like a very classic thud of restorations biting together. Whereas when you've got that unmistakable sound of someone biting together on all their teeth, it makes a very specific sound. And the more you do this, the more you understand how it should sound like. So this is a really good thing. Check with shim hold. So shim stock is 8 microns. And you check the tooth in front, and you check the tooth behind. And if they're holding shim, then your tooth is probably not high. And you can feel the fremitus with your fingers. It's the vibration that you get on the teeth and the PDL. You put your fingers on the teeth, and you can feel that the other teeth are starting to touch. And that's important as well. And the take-home point is that the very last thing you do with a patient is ask them, how does that feel? Because you have some patients, and you can jack them up open so high inadvertently, and you get them to bite together, and you'd say, hey, how does it feel? And they say, yeah, it feels great, it feels fine. How can you trust that patient? Whereas other patients, they can be off by, a micron, and they'll tell you. So the very last thing you should check is once you've done all the other 8 points, hey, how does it feel? And the patient should give you a thumbs up, say, hey, that feels good. And then you're pretty much certain not to be high.